Some truths arrive quietly, long after the moment that created them. Somewhere, someone still holds a memory of you like it happened yesterday, even if you barely registered it at the time. A passing instant, almost ordinary to you, became a turning point in their life, dividing everything into what came before you and what felt different afterward. They never intended to share this, not because it lacked meaning, but because it carried too much weight to explain easily. When you crossed their path, they were going through a silent internal collapse, the kind that doesn't show on the surface or ask for attention. There were no dramatic signals, only a private struggle that slowly reached its edge. Without realizing it, your presence disrupted that moment in a way they still can't fully explain. You didn't offer solutions or speeches, and you didn't need to. Simply being there, existing in the same space at the right time, became something they held onto when everything else felt uncertain. What they carry now isn't about admiration in the usual sense, but about survival and timing and how small encounters can change the direction of a life. And your role in that story remains fixed, not as something loud or performative, but as a quiet shift in their path that they never forgot. It lingers not as a burden, but as an unspoken reminder that ordinary moments can hold extraordinary impact, even when neither person realizes it at the time, and continues to echo quietly across distance and time. It was something far quieter, something most people overlook. You treated them like they still mattered when they had already decided they did not. You spoke to them as if tomorrow was obvious, when tomorrow felt impossible to them. You looked at them without knowing that they were already saying goodbye to the world in their head. That simple normality shattered the final decision they had made. They replay your voice, your timing, your presence, over and over, because it forced a pause, and in that pause, life slipped back in. They did not wake up healed. They woke up confused about why they were still here, confused about why one person could unknowingly become a lifeline. That confusion kept them alive long enough for something else to grow. Hope did not arrive instantly, but curiosity did, and curiosity was enough. Here is the part they never told anyone. When they walked away from you that day, they did not feel grateful. They felt exposed. You had seen them at a moment when they were internally falling apart, even though you never realized it. That terrified them, because it meant someone had touched their life without trying to own it. You were not trying to fix them. You were not trying to save them. You were simply being yourself, and that authenticity became unbearable for someone who was planning to vanish quietly. They went home and sat with a truth they had not faced before. If one person could make them feel seen without effort, then maybe disappearing was not the answer. That realization hurt more than the pain they were trying to escape, because it meant staying, and staying requires courage they did not believe they had. Yet your existence planted that courage inside them anyway. Understand this carefully. Not everyone who saves a life knows they did it. Most saviors never hear the confession. Most never see the tears that come later in silence. This person carried this secret while rebuilding themselves piece by piece. Every step forward reminded them of you, not in obsession, in reverence. You became the proof that light can appear without warning. They watched themselves change. They stopped making plans to end things. They started making plans to endure things. And every time the darkness tried to reclaim them, one thought interrupted it. If I leave, the world loses the moment that person unknowingly gave me. That thought became an anchor, quiet, firm, unbreakable, and over time, their life began to look nothing like the one they almost abandoned. Now the reason this revelation is approaching you is simple and unavoidable. They are no longer surviving, they are living. And when someone finally learns how to live again, gratitude transforms into something deeper, responsibility. They feel responsible for telling you the truth, not to burden you, but to release themselves. Because carrying a debt to someone who never asked for it becomes heavy over time. They want you to know that your smallest actions mattered more than someone else's loudest promises. They want you to understand that who you are naturally is enough to alter destinies. And when they finally speak, it will not be dramatic. It will be raw. Because the greatest life-saving moments rarely look heroic. They look ordinary, just like you did to them. My beloved child. What happens next is not loud. It does not arrive with urgency or drama. It arrives slowly, the way truth always does when it is real. Some encounters never announce themselves, yet they quietly reshape everything that follows. This person has turned that moment over in their mind countless times, replaying it in different versions, searching for a way to express what once felt impossible to say out loud. They are not trying to place you on a pedestal or turn you into something larger than life. Instead, they are trying to make sense of a realization that arrived slowly but stayed permanently. Your presence entered their world at a point when everything felt sealed off, as if their thoughts had narrowed into a single corridor with no exit. What they once considered an ordinary day now stands out as the beginning of a shift they did not recognize at the time. Back then it felt subtle, almost invisible, but it marked the first break in a long silence they had learned to live with. Over time, they began to notice what they had stopped noticing before. Small sounds returning to meaning, light feeling less harsh, and the simple ease in how people laugh when they are not weighed down by their own thoughts. Those details, once absent from their awareness, started to reappear as if life itself was slowly widening again. They never expressed gratitude in the moment because understanding had not yet caught up with experience. It often takes distance to recognize the significance of something that once felt ordinary. Now, with clarity shaped by time, they understand that their direction changed not through a grand event, but through a quiet presence that shifted how they saw everything that came after. Not by force, but by example. You showed them what it looks like to exist without constant self-abandonment. This is where the truth becomes heavier. They are about to reveal that you did not just save them once. You saved them repeatedly, without being there. Every time they stood at the edge of giving up again, your memory returned. Not your face, not your words, your energy, the way you carried yourself, the way you treated them without suspicion or judgment. That memory became a reference point, proof that the world still held people who could touch lives without demanding anything in return. That realization became a shield, and with that shield, they learned to fight quietly, to stay another day, to endure another night, to choose breath over escape, again and again, until staying alive stopped feeling like a burden and started feeling like a choice. They now understand something most people never do, that saving a life is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is subtle. Sometimes it looks like timing. Sometimes it looks like kindness that does not know it is kindness. And that is why they feel compelled to tell you, because you may never see yourself the way they see you. You may underestimate the gravity of your presence. You may think impact requires effort. They want to shatter that belief gently. They want you to know that you carry something rare, the ability to make people feel anchored simply by being authentic. And that ability does not fade, it multiplies. You have likely done this before. You may do it again, without ever realizing it. When they finally speak, you will feel it before you understand it. Not shock, recognition, a quiet knowing that this moment was inevitable. Their voice may tremble, their words may pause, but their truth will be clear. You mattered when they believed they did not. You stayed real when everything felt artificial, and because of that, they stayed alive long enough to become who they are now. This revelation is not meant to place responsibility on you. It is meant to free both of you, them from silence, and you from underestimating yourself, because some lives are not saved by heroes. They are saved by people who simply show up as themselves, and you did exactly that, my beloved child. There is one layer of this truth that has been kept buried deeper than all the rest. This person did not just survive because of you. They changed because of you. Survival keeps the body alive. Change rebuilds the soul. After that moment with you, they started questioning the story they had been telling themselves for years. The story that said they were invisible, replaceable, unimportant. Your presence disrupted that narrative without arguing with it. You did not try to convince them of their worth. You treated their worth as obvious. That quiet assumption shook them more than any reassurance ever could. It forced them to confront a painful realization that maybe the voice telling them they did not matter was never the truth. It was just a voice that had gone unchallenged for too long. They are about to confess something else. For a long time after you saved them, they felt unworthy of the life they were still living. Guilt followed them quietly. Guilt for staying. Guilt for not disappearing like they had planned. And in that guilt, they asked themselves one question over and over. Why did this person cross my path and not someone else? Why did their presence stop me when nothing else could? That question became the seed of growth. Instead of running from it, they leaned into it. They began living in a way that honored the interruption you caused. They became gentler, more aware, more present. They show up in a way that quietly mirrors what you once did for them, almost as if life has folded the past back on itself in a gentler form. The surprising part is that they are no longer arriving as people in pieces but as individuals who have found a steadier center, not flawless, yet far more grounded than before. What they bring with them is not just memory but proof of transformation, a reflection of how small moments of care can grow into something far larger than what was ever spoken. They want you to see that what you once gave freely did not end at the moment it was offered. It continued moving through their choices, shaping how they handled setbacks, how they stayed patient when life turned heavy again, and how they learned not to give up so easily. In many ways, your influence became something unspoken but lasting, carried forward like an inherited way of thinking rather than a lesson taught directly. That is why this encounter feels different to them, almost like stepping back into a circle that was never truly broken but simply stretched across time. Beneath their calm, there is also hesitation, a quiet concern that understanding this might make you feel responsible for being that kind of presence for everyone, but that was never their intention. They are not trying to elevate you into something unreachable. Instead, they are gently helping you see what was already there. The truth they hope you recognize is that your value was never conditional on effort to become someone else, because even in your most ordinary moments, you were already having a lasting impact without realizing it. It is meant to ground you, to remind you that your smallest gestures are not small, that your presence carries weight even when you are unaware of it. When this revelation finally reaches you fully, it will not feel overwhelming. It will feel affirming, like a quiet confirmation of something your soul already knew, that you are not here by accident, that the way you move through the world leaves marks you cannot see, and somewhere, because of you, a life that almost ended continued, not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily, strongly, purposefully, and that is the kind of saving that never fades. My beloved child, there is a moment approaching that will feel strangely quiet when it finally arrives. No thunder, no dramatic build-up, just a stillness where truth lands gently but permanently. This person has waited until they were strong enough to speak without collapsing back into who they once were. They needed to meet you again as proof to themselves that they survived for the right reasons, not to cling, not to depend, but to grow. When they stand before you, what you will notice first is not their words. It will be their calm, the calm of someone who once lived in chaos and now understands peace. That calm exists because they stayed, and they stayed because of you. They will explain that your role in their life was never meant to be temporary, even if your paths separated, even if time passed, even if silence grew. Your influence did not expire. It matured. In moments when they were tested again, when old thoughts tried to resurface, they remembered how effortless your presence felt. how safe it felt to simply exist around you. That memory became their internal compass. Whenever they felt lost, they asked themselves one question: what choice keeps me alive in the truest sense? And every time, the answer pulled them forward, away from self-destruction, towards self-respect. That shift is the real miracle you created. There is something else they are ready to reveal. They once believed that people like you were rare accidents, temporary lights that appear and disappear. But after surviving, they realized something deeper, that people like you exist everywhere, quiet carriers of hope who never announce themselves, and because of you, they learned to recognize those people, to become one of them. You unknowingly taught them how to move through the world differently, with awareness, with restraint, with compassion that does not ask for recognition. That lesson reshaped their identity, and identities, once changed, never return to their old form. As they speak, you may feel a strange resistance inside yourself, a desire to minimize what you hear, to say it was nothing, to dismiss your role. That reaction is natural. People who carry real impact rarely see it clearly. But this moment is not asking you to argue. It is asking you to receive, to accept that you are more powerful than you allow yourself to believe, not in a way that elevates ego, in a way that anchors responsibility to remain who you are, authentic, present, unassuming, because that version of you saves lives without even trying. When this part of the truth settles in you, something will shift permanently. You will walk differently, speak differently, pause differently, not because you feel watched, but because you finally understand the weight of your existence. Somewhere behind you is a life that continued because you were yourself at the right time. Somewhere ahead of you are moments that will matter just as deeply, and now you know this, not as a theory, as a lived truth. Beyond what was ever spoken aloud, there is a quiet realization they carry with them, something they rarely explain because it feels too personal, too deeply woven into their sense of change. It was never just about the moment of being helped or the instant of turning a corner. It was about everything that followed afterward, the ordinary days that demanded a new way of living. Each sunrise became a reminder that continuation itself was a choice, not something automatic, and that choice had to be made again and again in small, unseen ways. There were times of doubt, moments of heaviness, and brief internal struggles, yet even in those intervals, they found a reason to steady themselves and move forward. What stayed with them most was the simple realization that no one was trying to shape their path or control their direction, but instead offered a sense that staying present in life was still possible. That understanding slowly became an inner agreement they made with themselves, to remain engaged, to keep trying, and to not let difficult moments define the final outcome. Over time, their experience of emotional pain also transformed. What once felt overwhelming began to feel like a signal, something that asked for patience rather than escape, for reflection rather than retreat. This shift did not arrive suddenly but unfolded gradually, almost silently, reshaping how they responded to challenges. Instead of turning away, they began to pause and observe, allowing themselves space to understand rather than react. In that quiet evolution, a deeper resilience formed, one that did not erase difficulty but changed its meaning, leaving behind a steadier, more grounded way of moving through life, permanently. There is a reason this truth is reaching you now. You are entering a phase where your influence will matter more than ever. You may not feel ready, you may feel ordinary, but that is exactly how you felt when you saved them too. This revelation is not a warning, it is a reminder that you do not need to become louder, stronger, or different. You need to remain aligned, because who you already are alters outcomes in ways you cannot track. Lives do not announce when they are saved, they reveal it later. Like this, they want you to know that they are not tied to you out of dependency, They are connected to you through gratitude that expects nothing. Their life is theirs now, strong, grounded, chosen, and yet you will always exist in it as the moment everything turned, not as a savior to worship, but as proof that humanity still works, that presence still matters, that timing still holds power, and that one person, without trying, can interrupt despair. When this truth finally settles fully inside you, it will not inflate you, it will steady you. You will realize that your life is already meaningful, even on days it feels quiet, even when nothing dramatic happens, even when no one thanks you, because somewhere, once, you were the reason a story did not end, and stories that continue carry echoes forever. My beloved child, after this truth is spoken, there will be a silence that feels heavier than words, not awkward, not empty, sacred, because both of you will understand something that cannot be explained further, that some connections are not meant to be loud or permanent in form, they are permanent in impact. This person will finally breathe differently, not because you fixed them, but because the secret they carried no longer owns them. They survived, they lived, and now they have honored the reason they stayed. That release will change them in real time. You will see it in their eyes. Relief, completion, peace. They will also admit something quietly. For a long time, they believed they owed you their life. But with growth came clarity. They realized that you never asked for repayment. You never positioned yourself as their rescuer. That is what allowed them to heal without dependence. You gave without claiming. You helped without knowing. That is why this story ends in strength, not attachment. They are not coming to hold on to you. They are coming to thank the moment that shaped them, and then walk forward whole. That maturity is your true legacy in their life. Here is the once-in-a-lifetime realization meant for you. You are not meant to witness the results of every impact you create. Most of them unfold far away from you. In lives you will never revisit. In moments you will never see. This one returned only to remind you of who you are when you are not trying to be anything. A stabilizing presence, a quiet force, someone whose existence alone can interrupt darkness. That understanding will stay with you long after this conversation fades. From this point on, you will notice something subtle about yourself. You will listen more deeply. You will choose words more carefully, not out of fear, out of awareness, because now you know that someone might be standing where this person once stood, quietly breaking, quietly deciding, and your presence once again might be enough, not to save, but to pause the fall. And sometimes, a pause is all life needs. This story does not end with applause. It ends with alignment. You continuing to be you. Them continuing to live. Two paths changed forever by a moment that never announced itself. And that is the most powerful kind of story there is. My beloved child, what unfolds after this is not something you will announce to anyone. You will carry it quietly, the way truth prefers to travel. This revelation will begin to rearrange the way you see your past. Moments you dismissed as insignificant will suddenly feel heavier. Conversations you forgot will return with meaning. You will realize that your life has been touching others long before you ever became aware of it. Not through effort, through essence. And that understanding will not make you proud. It will make you careful. Careful in the most beautiful way, because awareness sharpens presence, and presence changes outcomes. Someone may leave your life feeling lighter, yet you carry something deeper from the moment, an awareness that real influence is rarely loud or visible, but often revealed through timing and presence. There are moments when you enter a situation and everything could have taken a darker turn, yet something in you simply holds the space steady without instruction or preparation, and that quiet effect says more than recognition ever could. You show up when it matters most. You speak when silence might have caused harm, and you remain when absence could have changed the outcome, not because of intention to be significant, but because your presence aligns with the needs of that moment. Over time, this begins to form a pattern, and patterns like this are not random. They repeat, because they reflect something steady in how you move through life. Inside that realization, a subtle strength begins to rise, not as pressure or urgency, but as a grounded sense of responsibility that does not drain you, only centers you. You start to see your patience, your tone, and your ability to listen differently, understanding that impact is not defined by scale or attention, but by small, precise moments that matter more than they appear to at first glance. One interaction can shift direction, one conversation can stabilize emotion, and one honest version of you can quietly keep something from breaking apart. This understanding follows you into future places and encounters you have not yet reached, shaping how you show up without forcing change. Many of these moments will never return with acknowledgement, because most people move forward silently after being helped in ways they cannot always describe. Yet even without words, something important has already occurred. From here, you begin to move with a clearer sense of your own presence, not heavier, but more aware, carrying the quiet certainty that your existence has already made a difference somewhere, and will continue to do so, in ways you may never fully see.